Hello, this is Heather Gates, and I welcome you to the Stand in the And podcast, where we have honest conversations about the messy complexity of the human experience, where we get stuck, and how we find forward in the and of it all where many things are true at once. This podcast is designed especially for those of us who want to make things more beautiful and better for everyone, and sometimes need reminding that we are human too. I'm so glad you're here. Welcome back to the podcast, y'all, where I'm joined today by our first expert in the and, Brooke Nielsen Yang, who, according to her beautiful website, is a guide and a coach who knows that the right support combined with your own inner wisdom has the power to transform. Brooke, thank you so much for being here on this adventure with me today.
Thanks for having me. Really
Yeah.
excited to be here.
Good. Before we get started, I know I just mentioned what your lovely website says, but I'd love to give you an opportunity to introduce yourself in the way that feels meaningful to you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, so like you said, I'm Brooke Nielsen Yang, and I'm trained as a psychotherapist, and I also work as a coach and guide. And what you read from is from my coaching site. Um, and I work with sensitive, intuitive, thoughtful people who are standing at a threshold in their lives. That's really what I've realized is my people. And oftentimes they're super capable people who look like they have everything together on the outside, or at least they just look as capable as they are. And often inwardly, they're feeling like, gosh, something in the way that I live and how I lead is just no longer in alignment. So the work that I do with people is helping them drop into a deeper relationship with themselves. And that often allows them to then move forward with more clarity, intuition, and self-trust.
I'm like, and this is why that we are brought together today. Oh my gosh, I resonate just so deeply with everything you said. I do want everybody to know that you are not my therapist or coach,
Yes.
even though they probably just heard that and they're like, oh, of course. But I resonated. So I didn't realize you had coaching site and other, but one of the things I wanted to reflect back is I felt so mirrored by the language on your
Oh,
site around
wow.
sensitivity. I would say, and I didn't know this for a long time, but would identify as a highly sensitive person. And for a long time saw that as a liability,
Mm-hmm.
and I think even the example I want to share as we get in today is related to that sensitive part of myself. So I just love having that. It
Mm.
feels lovely just to have that reflected back. Um, again, in a way that is guiding toward intuition
Mm.
and trust and self leadership. So I'm excited. Gosh, now even just personally excited to get to have a conversation with you today. Again, I think I said before we recorded, I'm a little sweaty in the hands. To even be talking to somebody maybe who's a therapist on air for everyone to hear. So I just will
Wow.
acknowledge that as we get started. But I'm grateful to dig in today, um, in particular as we talk about this notion of parts work. And I'm kind of air quoting that
Mm.
because I think it might mean a little bit different things to different people. Before we do that, it is our tradition on the podcast to do what I call an and stand, which is just a quick check in. It can be feeling words or something else around the and that you find yourself standing in today
Mm.
as we are joined together in conversation. I'm happy to go first unless you are ready and want to share.
Yeah, absolutely. Go
Okay.
ahead. Yeah.
Well, aside from as it relates to this podcast, I'm showing up a little nervous. I think for me, so I'm just getting back from a weekend with a lot of time in the car, which for me meant a lot of podcast and listening and consuming of content. So, grounded in a macro context, I feel like I'm showing back up at work today, in the end of feeling quite intimidated and motivated or activated around just kind of the big picture that we find ourselves situated in. You know, from I work a lot with people who are in the public health and human services space and kind of what's happening there, but even broadly, when we think about changes that are upon us and coming related to AI and technology, there's just a
Mm,
lot. And so thinking about, what it means to be engaged and connected and lead and support others in that space, it can feel really overwhelming and intimidating to
uh-huh,
find your way. And I do find, right, a lightness and an optimism and a motivation, I think that comes from just what I see over and over about the power of connection and of people. Um, whether connection to self, which we're going to talk more about, and the parts of us, but really connection and collaboration with each other. So it's yeah, it's an interesting kind of dance to hold. I'm grateful for the opportunity in my work to kind of be able to step into a piece of it, but to the hold that I'm intimidated and I'm showing up and I'm motivated
uh,
is a place I find myself kind of at, before I call in and talk to you today. It's kind of the swirl that I'm standing in.
yeah. Thank you for sharing that. I
Yeah.
just appreciate the vulnerability, and it makes me wanna expand. I had, like, a couple words, but it makes me
Yeah.
wanna kinda expand my
Yeah.
sharing a little bit. Gosh, I relate to that a lot, and
Mm,
my version of that is holding, just what I spoke to in my intro of, like, stepping into myself as a threshold holder,
mm,
not just a depth holder. And then the difference of that might only be in my own mind at this point, but there is an evolution as far as the role that I'm holding and the types of work that I'm doing, and it feels so exciting and inspiring, and I love talking on podcasts and connecting. And then there's also, to your point, just like there's a lot going on. And as a sensitive, it is a lot of self work and
mhm,
regulation and processing. And there's fatigue there from
mm,
just how much it takes to psychologically. I'm quoting someone here. I saw the title of a video by Miriam Williamson, I believe her name is, and she said the title of the video was "How to Psychologically Endure These Times."
mm,
I was like, "Boy, does that speaks to me."
mhm.
So, yeah, that's my and is really holding that excitement and energy and also groundedness as well as fatigue.
And as somebody, my guess is you're holding that and you're holding others in the and
Yeah,
of that also, right? So
yeah,
the fatigue of, "I'm in it." We are human too. I keep reminding all of us on this podcast, even
yes,
though most people listening are in a role to help others in some way, who are on thresholds and navigating that type of fatigue. And we are also, right, feel it and in it. It is a lot
that's right.
of processing. Let's use that as our entry point then, Brooke, because
Nice.
really, when I think about the work, um, you mentioned the language of self work, which we could probably unpack a little bit too. I use, the language of, I think, reminding us again often as people who are helping others that we are always also part of the work. Then also our own internal showing up, our way of being, we're a piece of all of this too. And so for me, this journey around self work really came to be from a place of I just felt like I was in the way of myself, like I was in the way of things or how I was being. So I have one of those people probably with insatiable curiosity about what is what is happening with me. But in the past couple of years, one of the I'll call it a tool. I'm going to turn it to you to explain how you may call it a framework. I don't know what you would say, but I think of this idea of parts work as a tool. And on this podcast, right, the design is to create a space for honest conversations around the complexity of the human experience, talk about how we get stuck, and ways that we find forward. So far, most of these are just conversations with us all out here figuring this out. in what are we doing? Where do we find ourselves stuck? So, over the past couple of years, one of the tools that has been the most helpful for me is this notion of doing parts work. It very much speaks to me too, um, around this language that we have about the and, where many things can be
Mhm.
true in us and among us at the same time. That's my entry point for this conversation is I really wanted somebody to come on and just say I'm somebody who's like, when I get excited or feel benefit about something, I just wanna tell folks about it. So this is not me saying everyone needs to do this or it's gonna work for everybody else. But it is a tool that has been really impactful, not only for me, but how I interact with others. So I'm curious if you'll just level set us, Brooke, and what do we mean when we say parts work?
Well, I just wanna touch on a couple things you said
Yeah,
first.
sure.
One, you're like, "I'm just out here trying to figure it out." Me too.
Yes, right, same as
So,
for everybody.
that's for everybody. So,
Yeah,
yeah, I'm coming on with some expertise and experience and totally coming in with my humanity and, like,
of course.
when I'm like, how to work on myself, sometimes that's like, that work is like, I'm gonna go take a nap.
Yeah,
You know what I
right.
mean? Like,
Right,
I'm not like
exactly.
I'm pulling out all my frameworks, it's like
Right.
sometimes just, well, I need to drink some water.
Yeah, exactly.
Um, but yeah, I was so excited that you wanted to talk about parts because I also love it, and I also am insatiably curious as well, so when I find something that just clicks, yeah, and parts work really has been that for me as well, and really everybody who I work with, when I introduce it to them, at first, usually they're like, "That's weird,"
Yep, for
and then
sure.
pretty soon after, they're like, "Well, this just makes sense, so I'm in."
Yeah,
So, the way I often introduce this to people, and this is like personal example, is opening if I open my fridge and I've got some leftover chocolate cake there, and chocolate and cake are like, oof, big, big loves and of mine. And so if I open that fridge and I see the cake there, there's gonna be numerous parts of me that speak up. So there's gonna be the part of me that's just very much, I want the cake. I want the cake, I want the chocolate, yum, yum, yum. Then there's gonna be a part of me that is like, well, okay, we're about to see a couple clients. If we eat that cake right now, we're going to get that sugar spike and crash in about 20 minutes. That's going to put us in a place that, we're not going to feel so good.
Mm,
So, right there, and there might be a few more voices in there, but right there, that's parts, right? There's the part of me that wants to eat it, the part of me that's like, yeah, we could, but like, think about the consequence.
mhm.
And most people are familiar with that push-pull
I
in
think so too.
themselves,
Yep.
right? Of like, "Oh, I want to. Yes, no, yes." And, you could replace that cake with just about a million different things,
Mhm.
dilemmas. So parts is this idea that there is nothing pathological. In fact, it's completely normal for all human psychology to have parts of ourselves. We could call it ego states, but just aspects. We could call it aspects of ourselves.
Mhm.
And so, again, nothing problematic here, but each of these parts of ourselves have different priorities. They might have different thought processes. Sometimes they have different ages. So, like, for example, with the cake, the part of me is just like, I want the cake. It might be a part that's just really oriented to pleasure or even, like, relief, right? If we do something that's kind of like a dopamine hit, like, "Ah, that feels good," or I feel that's a distraction maybe from the discomfort I was feeling. And then the one who is like, "Well, let's think about your schedule. That sounds like a" it's very adult, right? That part
Yeah,
wasn't I was 5.
yeah.
That part sounds very responsible, and is kind of forward thinking, and those 2 probably have pretty different ways that they view the world. So, just there's a lot more to say here, but it's this idea that when we can understand that we have parts, that we are not one thing within ourselves, it's actually so much easier to support ourselves and work with ourselves instead of work against ourselves.
And I feel like, Brooke, whether people are oriented. So I came into parts work through the work of Dick Schwartz and
Mhm,
IFS, internal
mm,
family systems. Whether you know about that or other frame or use whatever model of parts work you do, it is in the language that we use, I think, as
mm,
people to say, well, part of me wants to go to that and part of me does. Like you hear it.
that's right.
We feel it in us. And, I think to the point that you made there at the end, so much of the why this matters for me is this kind of almost separation of different voices, pieces, parts to better understand and then also help manage the internal conflict around, right? So much I think of where I still to this second get in struggle the most is on the inside in internal conflict of some sort. And so parts work helps me understand. And I don't know, again, like, there's a piece of me too that's still like, "This feels so weird to say." I'm there's a part of me is like, "You're so weird." I'm like, "I know," and it helps me, and I'm gonna talk about it. Um, but understanding the different perspectives and then the role that I can play almost as an internal facilitator to help bring some cohesion, because in absence of that, and I'm happy to share an example too if that feels helpful, but in absence of that, it's this sort of disorienting what is true, kind of feeling like, well, what do I care about? Like, who am I? What do I care about? What do I really want when you have all this? I don't want to say it's always conflicting, but different stories, different perspectives on the inside. So the like, so what part of it to me is and I'd be interested if there's more you wanna say here, but
Yeah.
the, like, why it matters, to me, it has been a way yeah, to bring a deeper understanding, and I mean, there's a lot we could dig into here about, like, the depth of understanding. You mentioned how old the parts are. There's more you wanna jump into
Yeah,
there?
yeah, I'd
Yeah,
love to piggyback off
yeah,
something you were saying, kind
go
of the
ahead.
what's the relevance here? And honestly too though, I have a feeling just as we talk more, people will get the relevance because you're not weird and this is applicable,
I
and
think
I
so
just
too.
know the majority of people are they're gonna feel how it's applicable. So here's an
Yeah, it
example
might
of
just it's gonna reveal itself maybe
that's
as we
right.
talk more about
It
it.
is, and
Yeah,
here's
okay.
and something that came to my mind is this is me, like, I don't know, 15 years ago and before I had horrible, horrible anxiety. So teens, 20s, um, and then yeah, I mean, certainly still have some anxiety, but it
Yeah,
was
me too.
really bad, and, this is way before IFS, internal family systems, was talked about or parts was talked about. But back then, the way this was framed was externalizing things, so taking something that is inside and putting it outside of us. And so how I was introduced to this was externalizing my anxiety. So rather than,
Mm,
"I'm an anxious person. I'm just anxious. Oh, me and my anxiety. Oh, I'm so anxious today. Oh, it's awful, my anxiety." This idea of starting to name it as anxiety almost as a part
yep.
as a thing that is not authentic me.
Mhm.
So I started playing with using languaging of like, "Oh, anxiety is really loud today."
Mm,
Or anxiety is saying, "You shouldn't do that because that would mean you're lazy," or "You shouldn't do that. Something bad's gonna happen." And and I think this is what parts work does. It started to just create a bit of distance between me and this thing that had tormented me. And that did numerous things. One, and this is something I see with people big time, is there's like a de-shaming effect.
yes.
So rather than it being like, God, I'm just this anxious person, it was like, wow, anxiety is a big player in my life and it's really hard on me. But I could name like, I don't always agree with it. And it's definitely not who I am at my core. So kind of allowed it to not hold such a power
Mhm.
in how I in my identity, 1. And then 2, by naming it as something separate than me, it allowed me to interact with it in a new way. Rather than just beating myself up, why do I care? Why am I worried? I could start engaging with it, like even talking to it. Tell me more. Like, what are you anxious about? Why are you here when I'm at this coffee shop? There's everything's okay. What's going on? Does that make sense?
Oh my gosh, 1,000%, and I didn't
Mm.
know we shared this similar of a story,
Mm,
but same on the anxiety side,
mm,
and one of the even to me too, pre-knowing about parts, I think I had gone to something, like, wrote on a paper that I'm gonna let go of anxiety and, like, burn it in a fire, and then I had a terrible, like, incident, that I'll spare the details of, but then finally just, like, sat down at my computer, was like, "Dear anxiety,
ugh,
seems like you're upset about something that happened and that I thought we weren't gonna but seems like you're gonna be around forever, so we should get to know each other differently." And just like poured out this letter to my anxiety.
wow.
And so I very much resonate with what you're saying around the distance and the separation. Not only from the I am this, like the identity, like separating from identity.
Mhm.
I'm careful, be interested to listen back to the podcast to see what I've said in these, but I try not to say, right, I am anxious.
Mhm.
I am feeling a way.
Mm,
I am somebody that's high energy on the inside, right? But that language
mm,
does matter to me and it does give it some distance. Um, and journaling to various parts or experiences that I have in myself had been a very powerful tool. I mean, almost like that was more a letter to anxiety, but one of the tools that I use on a regular basis is more like, almost like I'm writing a screenplay, but I'm like, so what is going on? And, then it's like, here's what the part says, and here's what I say. And here's like that dialogue back and forth brings distance, which brings ease. It shifts the sort of over identification with and I don't know how to explain to y'all how it works, but somehow it brings new insight. I mean, again, it's one of those things that I think until you are doing it, you're like, "What happens there?" Um, so yes, I think to all of that. So maybe I'll share an example of kind of recent on the parts side too. So a place where again, I have a jillion examples, but I'll use one that is a little more if Brooke's not here to support me as my therapist, so I'll try to keep it chill. Um, one of the places where I was getting particularly stuck, I'll say recently. So I have a consulting business in that I travel a fair amount, sometimes on airplanes, sometimes not. I love my work. As I sit here with you today in a grounded space, I love what I do. I love the people that I work with. I feel grateful to have the opportunity to do what I do in the world. And on travel days, there is a part of me who is convinced that we need to let it all go and like just stay home and write books. So I was in it's a disorienting amount of like what is true, this sort of when I'm getting all of those like travel day, I start and I don't even I think one of the tricky parts was like it felt so much like me. It didn't feel like a separate part. It was like, gosh, is it true? Just really don't want to do this anymore. Like I don't want to do this work anymore. Like, is that true? What I know to be true now through lots of curiosity within myself, the sensory sensitive part of me gets completely overwhelmed by the travel process and wants to do everything possible to try to get us to stay at home in the routine where everything's safe and we control all the environments and there's not all the people. The I really want to be liked part of me gets very stressed anytime we're gonna go be somewhere new and maybe not belong. The mom nurturing, caregiving part of me wants to stay at home, and my kids are older, like, they're gonna be leaving. I just wanna stay home and, like, stare at them, all the time. The business part of me knows that I have a job to do, and contractually, I've said I'm gonna go do this, so I will be getting on this airplane to go do the thing that we're doing today.
Uh,
We can think later about what we wanna change.
uh,
The "I am here on the planet to make a difference" part is like, absolutely, we're going. So in my head on travel days, all of this is spiraling around in like very disorienting way. Like now I understand what's happening, but before it's just this spiral of like, and then you have anxiety just from travel and planes and all that. And it just was a lot. Knowing what I know now requires something more like almost like you're going to have a board meeting, but with yourself. Like, all right, team, tomorrow. So there are tools that I use that are proactive and then reactive or responsive. Proactively, I might say, all right, tomorrow's a travel day. Sensitive part, I know that you need this and this and this because what also like internally the parts are like fighting with each other. It's like who's in charge. So by separating and not identifying with any one of them, I can kind of get a handle on the big picture.
mm,
And then think about what do I need to do? What is true for me and what do I need to do to support myself in the fact that we're going to be traveling tomorrow? I'm going to take noise canceling headphones. We're not going to go out late at night so that sensory part. It often, I think some of my challenges right now really boil down to this dance that every day am negotiating between my sensitivity and my intensity.
mm, wow.
Right? This like
Mm,
I am like big and go and be
mm,
helpful and I'm quote a lot and then sensitivity that just wants to be
mm,
quiet. So that is in me and I'm always negotiating that dance between those two and then there's a lot also that gets in there but I've had to do a lot of really understanding the needs there and the stories there and then how do I negotiate and maybe it's okay when we get back, we're going to have a day where we're not going to see anybody. Like I have to do a lot of negotiating to tend to those pieces of me um, that just feel true about the different parts of of who I am, and even helping. Then I think in that role is like understand the diverse set of needs that exist within me, and then it's my responsibility, opportunity to try to figure out how to tend to those different needs, which in essence is how do I tend to myself? Here's what it takes for me to do this. I don't have energy anymore to like compare it to what other people are doing. Probably many of y'all don't have to recover the way that I do or prepare the way that I do for things, but like that internal parts journey has allowed me to keep showing up in the world in a way that I value and not self sabotage or right, spiral in ways that I can't recover from because I'm ignoring a need or I think, God, sensitivity. I judged the sensitive part of myself for a very long time. I didn't want to be that way. I don't, right? But instead, what are the needs? How do I integrate them? That's a lot of storytell. So I'll just say that's
no,
a
it is
kind of a specific
beautiful,
example.
and I would love. I mean, there's numerous pieces in there that I would love to break down,
Yeah.
and first of all, I just really related, I wrote it down, the sensitivity and intensity and being kind of pulled in both directions there, and a lot of times they're not always, in alignment with each other. I just deeply, deeply relate to that. I think a lot of entrepreneurs do, business owners, leaders,
Mhm.
visionaries, I think relate to that. Um, but I wanna speak to so first of all, I just like, wow, you navigate with such sophistication your
Mm.
parts. And so I just wanna name that, like, the way you have learned to navigate your parts is something that often takes people and maybe it has taken you years. It often takes
Mhm.
people years
Sure. Yeah.
to get to that. So I just wanna recognize, like, the beautiful sophistication that you
Oh,
are
well,
working
thank you.
within of, like, knowing how to support yourself in these different ways. Like, it takes a lot to get there. So I just
Thank you for that.
recognize that. Yeah. what I'd love to start with, so the, like, what you were saying first of it can be super disorienting
Mhm.
of, "Wow, there's so much noise in here." I'd love to orient and give people some buckets for how to think about different types of parts. It's
Awesome.
how I orient that helps me go, if I can start with, "What type of part is this?" That's kind of a nice
Okay.
starting
Yeah.
place. So, this is I'm kind of speaking, yeah, some people, more and more people now have heard of internal family systems. I pull from that, but some things, if someone happens to know IFS, some of this will sound familiar, some of it will be a little bit different. But there are generally 3 types of parts. There is our authentic self, sometimes just called self, uh, authentic self, adult self, and I would also say parts of me, of us that are, like, fundamental to ourselves. So when you say you're talking about, like, sensitivity,
Mhm.
that is, for me, an element of my fundamental self, of my authentic
Mhm.
self. So there's my authentic self, there are parts of me that I was born with, these just pure me. Then the second bucket is protector parts. IFS calls them manager parts. So these are not parts that we are born with. They are parts that come on board at some point to try to help us. So, like I said, with my cake example, I was not born with a part that was able to say, well, let's think things through about how sugar affects us. At some point, I developed a part that helped me manage my sensitivity, because I think that's probably what that is. It goes,
Mm.
I am not somebody who can throw whatever I want in my mouth and have no consequences, and that's just real.
Mhm.
And so I developed a part, we could say a manager part, who's like, I'm gonna kinda scan and just be aware of, "Hey, how are the things that I'm doing throughout my day impacting my sensitivity, and how can we be mindful of that so that we have, like, a good day?" So that's a manager part, a part that's trying to manage, um, ourselves, our lives. Another example of a manager part is the perfectionist. So, perfectionist often comes online to help, oh gosh, there are many, many reasons, but here's just one flavor. Um, Perfectionists were never no one's born a perfectionist, but at some point, often sensitive people who feel deeply impacted by their environment, maybe criticism, maybe expectation, maybe really, really aware and feeling sensitive of how we're perceived and not wanting to be perceived a certain way. And so a perfectionist part comes on board and is like, I've got you. I'm going to help us do everything right so that we won't feel shame, we won't get criticized, we won't be kicked out of the tribe. So, that's another type of, manager part. Another one is avoidance. This could look like, maybe I get really as a kid, I was a deep feeling kid, so, feelings were really overwhelming, and, uh, I was not around adults who really knew how to deal with feelings, so they couldn't really offer me help. So I had to learn, well, what do I do with these big, big feelings that are overwhelming me? I came up with it, unconscious came up with a couple parts who were like, "I got you," one of them being, "Hey, how about we just don't feel that?"
Mm.
How about we just kinda push that out and we just stay in our head, or we disconnect from our body, or we distract ourselves with other things as a strategy to not be overwhelmed. It's kinda making sense?
All I can think about right now is which bucket the part of me that's like, "Yeah, no, we're never gonna launch a podcast." So, when you listen to that first
Mm,
episode I think you did
mhm,
with Nash, like,
Mhm.
clear examples there of this big desire
Mhm.
to have voice, to create space, to do all of these things,
Mhm.
and then the absolutely not, whether it's the perfectionism. I think it covers a
Mhm.
lot of categories, but just in such real time, I can think of so many examples of what you're saying. So, yes, it resonates.
Yeah, and I'd love to that takes us perfectly into the 3rd bucket, which is IFS calls this exiles. We could call it vulnerable parts, younger parts, hurt parts of ourselves. But when I think of being in places where maybe I'm scared to put myself out there, it could be usually it's a younger, more vulnerable
Mhm.
part who maybe went through something where she wasn't fully accepted or it wasn't safe to be fully myself, fully seen, fully vulnerable, something like that. And that wound that comes from that
Mm.
experience, often they get kind of vacuum sealed inside of us. Most of us aren't in a position to, like, work through that at
Right.
8 or 12. And so we just vacuum seal it away, and that's where these protectors come on board and go, "Ah, let me help Brooke never do anything that might make her feel ashamed or vulnerable or afraid." So that's where some of those parts come on board to help protect these sensitive or wounded parts of ourselves.
Mhm.
So if I were you, just imagining how my system would work, if I was having a like big fear about, say, starting a podcast, probably there would be a young, hurt, vulnerable part who had some experience that made this terrifying. And then some protector parts, manager parts who are coming who are like, we're going to make sure you're good. And that might sound like them being like, "No, no, no, don't do it. Let me tell you why you shouldn't." Or it might sound like the little one being like, "I'm so scared. No, I don't wanna do it." It could kinda go numerous ways.
Everyone's gonna know you're weird. And
Yeah.
it's gonna be official.
Yeah.
It's so interesting, and so where I think we get tangled up in that is sorting out, right? So let's given the buckets that you used,
Yeah.
when we have those, those stories swimming in us, figuring out, like, what is true. I'm always
Mm.
like, "What is the truthiest truth of myself?" Like,
Yes.
there's the, like, is that me? Um Yeah, just I think that's part of the negotiation then, right? Because we all have stories we're telling ourselves. I often think about what stories in me need an upgrade, right? Like, oh, and when you have this way of looking at it and I don't know, let's say it's a protector who says, "Oh, you should never do that because this." You're like, "Is that true?" Right? You can interrogate it differently.
Mm.
You can sit in your values differently. It just allows a different way to interact to help
Yes.
figure out, um, yeah, other areas that may need tending or things that you want to work further on. Brooke, before we completely run out of time today, because I could talk about parts and examples all the time, I do want to make sure that we cover. So if people are like, um, yeah, I see y'all. Indeed feels a little weird and a little true, and I'm curious. Where does one do you read a book first? Do you need a therapist? Like, if you're curious about parts work, how do people engage with this like, how do I know if I'm somebody listening? Is this a DIY journey? When do I need support?
I
How do
love that.
where
Yeah.
do you what does forward look like if people just want to learn more even about this?
That's excellent. So I think like, essentially all of the above. It
Okay.
can 100% be DIY and get you huge amount of traction, and then it can also continue into therapy, coaching, around it. So, I think kind of like my story with my anxiety, my starting place was just naming anxiety as something different than me,
Mm,
and so I think that's actually a really good place for people to start. If someone's never really thought much about this, to just go, "Huh, what parts of me are in the room right now? Okay, there's a part of me who's really thrilled to be." I'm thinking of Nash in your first,
yeah.
episode where part of him was like, "I'm so proud of my mom. I wanna do this interview with her," and then another part of him is like, "I would really like to be at the beach with
You're
my friends right now."
right.
You
Exactly.
know, it's like that just doing that
Mm,
is a really, really, really good place to start, and it's really profound. It's not a small thing.
mm,
So, kind of asking, "Okay, what's in the room right now? Can I feel?" I think often it's not easy to start with finding our authentic selves. Often the
mhm,
easiest is, well, let me find something that's loud.
mhm,
Okay, maybe there's anxiety, maybe there's worry, maybe there's rushing. That's a biggie with high achievers. We often have a part that could be an achiever part, could be a part that's just like go, 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 kind of trying to keep us up and on. And that can dictate the tone of our whole life.
mhm.
So I think starting to name like who's at the wheel, and it really doesn't matter you being able to like define it and
I
name
agree.
it. It's just kind of generally describing it. So for example, if you were able to say, "Oh wow, yeah, I really have this sped up part," speaking from experience here, I have this very sped up part that's kind of always kind of scanning and trying to get me to do better and do more, and just start naming that and start getting
Mm,
curious about why might they be here. And to go back to what you were naming earlier, I do it too, which is talk to your parts. So you could do this on a voice note, kind of talking back and forth with parts. You could do it with writing, or you could just think about it, which is starting to investigate and get curious. Why might this part have come on board? Now, I'm speaking about protectors here, and that's usually who we bump into first.
mhm,
That is a good place to start. And just like, oh, well, for example, oh, if your household was, say, really stressful, or maybe you went through an upsetting thing and you noticed from then on it was really hard to relax and hard to just kind of be in yourself. So, that investigation that I'm talking about there, I mean, there is so much mileage right there. Another question to ask: what makes this part like pop up and wake up and take over? What kind of things are happening that makes them swoop in? So that's the type of thing that I would say people can get huge, huge benefits from exploring journaling with themselves. That will open up more questions and more insights. And ultimately, we're wanting to the work that I do with people is people who are wanting to live more and more from the authentic self,
yeah,
the self, right? And so that's when people come to me, whether for therapy or coaching, it's usually kind of two directions. One, I want to live more for myself and I'm not sure how, or this other stuff keeps getting in the way. One, or the other, if you want to go to those wounded parts, you can journal to them, and a lot of times, people benefit from having help because it's just
yeah,
that's a lot to
it's a
do on
lot.
our own.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
And I certainly came at it from a combo, right? In, therapeutic space, also reading. I think the No Bad Parts, is that Dick
Oh, yeah,
Schwartz's
great
book?
one. I was gonna mention that. No Bad
Yeah,
Parts. Good
No
book.
Bad Parts,
Yes.
is a great I thought was a great resource. Couple things that
Yes.
you said that I wanna just put a pin in.
Sure.
As I think about this idea of stand in the and so much in this conversation basically is just this ability to show up in the and the complexity of ourselves.
Mm.
I think one of the things that I say most frequently as a tool for whatever we're navigating is get curious or stay curious. So I
Yes.
just love that you brought curiosity into this because I absolutely feel like it is a mechanism to help with that. And curiosity feels so important to me in really as a drawing in, right? As a coming in and closer to complexity, not a pushing away. Um, so there's that. And then briefly, as you were describing an example a second ago, you said getting curious, I think, about who's at the wheel. So much for me, this journey is as I work with the parts of me anxiety, fear, you know, whatever. Like, I understand, and I, Heather, true self, am the driver.
Mm,
And so what do I need to do to try to right, to continue to understand when that's not true, when I've let fear drive?
mm,
I mean, I've had, situations recently, and it actually then helps me even in communication with others to go,
mm,
"Hmm, we need to talk because here's something I think happened yesterday. I let this part of me, right? The part of me that is this and feels this way, I let her have the microphone yesterday. What's true to me is this, and that is not what was said, right? It gives me a tool for conversation too, and
that's
just
right.
that,
That's
like,
right.
who's driving or who has the microphone is another interesting place that I think
Mm,
is, like, how this comes out. Because we've talked mainly about the internal understanding.
mm,
Another place I get curious is, um, I said something snarky to one of my kids yesterday.
mhm.
And you hear and you're like, "Oof, like, that doesn't feel like, who did I just give the mic to, and what was that
Yeah.
about?" So this place of curiosity, I think, in how parts intersects with how we communicate and relate to other people is a really important place, and there's a whole oth we could do 1,000 other episodes on that
Mm,
side of it, but I just wanna acknowledge because 'cause we've talked a lot about this as sort of internal understanding, but I mean, for me, as much as it's helped me understand and navigate myself, it's helped with my connectivity to and with, other people too. So I just wanted to,
yeah, I'd
like.
love to say something about
Yeah.
that. I'm so glad you named that, and especially since you work with and your audience is a lot of leaders,
Yep.
it helps us to live and lead with integrity, right? That's what I hear you talk
Mm,
about. Like, it is such a good way to lead from integrity. If I get to be true to myself and honest with myself and go, "Ooh, that wasn't me. That wasn't my deepest me, the truthiest truth." And if I can own that,
mm.
um, gosh, what a safe person I'm becoming in that moment because the other person goes, "You know what? She's gonna own it if she kinda slips into something else." And it's a modeling that they can do that too, right? That we don't have to show up perfect. We just get to name and own, "Hey, that thing happened for me there. That wasn't how I wanna show up." So important. I'm so glad you named that.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, it gives me chills too, I think, and
Mm.
a tenderness just thinking about how it changes my communication with my kids, right? Like,
Mhm.
"Oof, I did this. There's a part of me that feels this way. I need you to know that that's not about you, actually, that's about me, and even if that's true, I shouldn't have said that way, and it helps in apology it helps me understand how to get to sincere apology, it helps me communicate that.
Yes.
It helps in separating, like, and hopefully you mentioned, right, shame, like, that's not my behavior. Like, don't own that. I need you to know that's not you, that was me, and again, a part of me, and I use that language, a part
Yeah.
of me, because it still wasn't
Mhm.
fully, the me that I want to, have step out, with intention. So I think a lot of this to me,
Mhm.
Brooke, just to tie a bow on it, is it feels very important to me to show up not only with authenticity, but to get there requires some intentionality. And so this is taking away the, like, default, what, just allowing whatever default thing running in me to run its programs, um, to really try to be intentional in a different way, and it helps me do that.
Mm.
Um, so
It's really
I'm
inspiring to me. Yeah.
well, and I just can't say enough about my gratitude for folks like you who are
Mhm.
helping people walk alongside themselves in
Mm.
this curiosity, because it is not, I mean, I think a lot of you mentioned even some examples where we're gonna avoid, like, it doesn't feel safe to engage with certain, parts of ourselves. So what comes up for me, almost like being an authenticity doula.
Ooh, can
or
I write that
something,
down?
right? I talk about being a strategy doula, but I'm like, there's something about, like, this the role that people like you play to sit alongside us, because what I know from having therapist is, like, what I want is to show up and I'm like, "Brooke, figure me out. Let me know what the deal is. I want you to fix it," actually, is what I come with.
Hmm,
That's not the game.
that's right.
What instead I know to be true is coaches, therapists, supportive other professionals that can walk alongside me as I find my way to or back to me is such a gift. And I
Hmm,
just wanna honor it has to feel, I mean, we talked about fatigue in the in the beginning. I know what a gift it is. I know what an energetic lift that is.
mm,
So I'm really feel grateful, not
hmm.
only for you being here today, but for the work that you're up to in the world. And I just know, especially for folks who are, like, sensitive and feeling everything, um, and for my folks on the who are listening. I mean, I've been through my own chapter of, like, I care too much for that. I'm too sensitive for this. I can't do this. I like, we need all that. It's a superpower,
Mm,
and we know it requires special tending.
mm.
Um, I know we're at time. I do wanna make a little bit of space for anything else that feels like it's sitting with you that you wanna make sure to leave with us before we wrap up today. I know we've s
Yeah, I'll just bounce right off what you left,
yeah,
what you said, and thanks for your kind words.
yeah,
It's so kind, and yeah, it's really an honor. I'm sure, like, the work you do,
yeah.
really an honor. Is something coming up for me is another reason of why I do this, because it feels good
Mm,
to be living from that authentic self. It just does. And I think all of us have been there of living in a moment, in a day, for a year, for a decade from a place that does not feel authentic. It doesn't feel good. Really doesn't. And so that I love that authenticity doula and birthing ourselves or bringing ourselves home to our truest self. It's a good way to live. It's
mm.
in and of itself.
Amen.
It is so wonderful, and so, I'm guessing that's just gonna resonate with people. That feels like one of those truths that people are gonna be like, "Yeah,"
Like,
I think
you feel that in
yeah,
your body.
yeah. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Well, again, thank you for being up, for being our
My
first
pleasure.
expert on the and. I know I use the word expert
Yeah.
loosely. We're all an expert in our own
Yes.
experience, and so everybody on here has expertise, and I do wanna acknowledge most of the people that have come on this show know me, we've worked together in some way, and that this is a bit of a trust fall for you, I know, and I really, appreciate it. And for folks listening, gosh, we've said 100 times, I hope you'll take away from this an even deeper curiosity, um, some grace, compassion, like holding I love, Dick Schwartz's book title, just No Bad Parts, like holding
Mm,
all the parts of you with some love and
mm,
care. And, let's continue to stay curious
mm,
about ourselves. Um, I would argue the better we get at our own deeper curiosity and our understanding of how to integrate, the better even we get at our ability to do that work in the world. So it's not instead of, it's as part of, I think, this bigger, um, work that many of us are trying to do in the world. If this episode resonates, I hope y'all will let me know. Y'all know how to find us. I hope you'll share it with somebody, and we'll look forward to seeing you again next time. Brooke, oh, you
and
got
could
another
I
thing?
yeah, I just
Yeah.
wanted to say, I just thought of a resource real quick,
Okay. Yeah.
speaking of
Sure.
how do
And we'll
we
put these in the show notes too.
great, great. Just speaking of where to start, I have a free resource called Coming Home to Yourself, and it's a workshop. And it's working with some of this stuff. It's how to move in this direction of coming home to ourselves. So yeah, just if someone's like this really resonates, I don't know where to start, that could be a good place.
I love that, and I actually meant to ask, where can people find you if they're curious to learn more about you and your work? And we'll
Yeah.
tag all this in the show notes, but if there's anything else you wanna highlight. So it sounds like Coming Home to Yourself is an upcoming
It's
workshop?
already there. So
Okay, it's already
on
exists.
my site, intuitivewarriorway.com, that is a free resource, and I think it's a great way to both get a taste of me, but also it's just I've gotten feedback that it's a really nice, robust, supportive thing.
Mm. I just love the title of it. It has to be lovely. So cheers to all of us and a coming home to ourselves, and each other. Thank y'all so much for being here. We'll see you next time. The Stand in the And podcast is supported by Human Centered Strategy, where we help leaders and teams build connection and strategy and complexity so that everyone can flourish. To learn more or to work with us, please visit us online at humancenteredstrategy.com or message me on LinkedIn.